Welcome friends to another Dune video. Today we look to Arakeen. We look to the Atreides losing that place to the Sardaukar. And we look at it from the Sardaukar perspective. Let's get straight into it. The battle in the city of Arakeen has already begun. Colonel Clone was there helping spring the trap on the Atreides. He rode the armoured dropship through the atmosphere as it debarked from the hold of the guild ship. He could already see the bombardment beginning to destroy the city. Then he was racing through the streets. His aim was to reach Leto's residency. His men launched explosives to take care of any organised defences, and Clona, as the house shields fell, thanks to the traitor inside House Atreides, had been told by the Emperor that he was to make sure that Leto had a clean death, and Bashar had said that he would see to this himself. And his forces met the Atreides guards. Clone recalls Leto's father making a power play that hurt his family and caused him to be a Sardaukar with the loss of his house's power. The Atreides troops had shown his family no mercy, and he was stuck in a prison complex on Seleucus Secundus. He and his brother fought, and they survived the Sardaukar training, such as having nothing to help them and having to find shelter and fight the planet's bloodthirsty predators. Then having to do it all again with knives. He lost his brother during the 2 years of ordeal, and Clone became all that was left of his family. In the Duke's residence, with his shield belt surrounding him, in a comforting home, Clone threw himself upon the Atreides captain, his Kinjal dagger raised, whilst his opponent defended himself with a long sword. Their body shields sparked as they crashed into each other. The Atreides captain managed to slice his arm with the sword tip, surprising Clone, and then the Atreides shoulders surged forward. Clone deflected the next blow and slid his Kinjal dagger through the man's shield and between the man's ribs, and his soldiers dealt with the Atreides. And he thought back to his training, how he became one of the Emperor's elite guard. Life was a little more comfortable there, but there was an awareness with the nobles around him that could go away at any moment, and it is there he first sees Leto of the House Atreides, the house that failed his. He hears Leto say that he'd been looking into his father's records and that things were not done by him, but the then Emperor Elrud, and he offers Borges back to the heirs that are still around, though not direct descendants. Back on Arakeen, Clone was surprised with how many of his men had been lost to the Atreides troops. Once he had locked down the residency, he would deliver the Emperor's message about who would kill Leto. Around him, military aircraft cruised across the skies through a maze of smoke columns. Booming rumbles echoed from the fringe of the city, where heavy artillery, archaic weaponry deployed by the Harkonnens, pummeled hideout cliffs in the shield wall. At the residency's far side, he saw a lone figure fighting three opponents. Duncan Idaho. In precisely controlled strokes, he dipped his blade through the body shield of the nearest Harkonnen fighter and gutted him, then withdrew. With a Kinjal in his other hand, he stabbed the Sardaukar in the kidney, a mortal wound. The Sardaukar stumbled, unable to believe the death blow he had just received. Clone froze, and the other Sardaukar cried out at the fall of one of their own. In efficient fashion, Idaho dispatched the two remaining Harkonnen soldiers and drove back the second Sardaukar, then bolted for the Harkonnen ornithopter. Clone and the rest then went after Idaho, and one reached the ornithopter. The man grabbed for the struts and clung by his hands before flailing and falling back to the ground. Clone takes a launcher to bring it down. Idaho performs evasive manoeuvres. Clone targeted the ship and launched the projectile, and missed, just. The aircraft's running lights went dark as Idaho disappeared into the curling smoke. Clone handed the launcher back to the uniformed man, who stared at him in silent disbelief. Both the Atreides and Sardaukar had codes of honour. Gesturing towards his men in Harkonnen uniforms, the Colonel Bashar marched them into the residency for one last encounter with Duke Leto Atreides, and then he reveals that he had missed on purpose. And of course, at this stage I turn things over to you. Drop me a comment down below if you'd like to.